It is a great pleasure to give a presentation at the Gender Summit Global for SDGs. I am Heisook Lee from Center for Gender Innovations, Science and Technology Research in Seoul, Korea. My presentation is on the gender innovations and accountable data for sustainable development. I'd like to start why we should apply gender lens to all 17 SDGs for gender equality. In 2015, just before the UN announcement of the adoption of Sustainability Agenda 2030, at the 6th Gender Summit Asia Pacific, hosted by Korea, many scientific evidences were presented that gender bias in scientific data stems from researches that have been carried out without considering sex and gender analysis. At the final discussions of Gender Summit Asia Pacific, it was pointed out that gender equality of UN SDGs should be a cross-cutting issue not only for Goal 5, but for all of 17 goals. The 6th Gender Summit Asia Pacific adopted a Seoul Declaration call to action to advance gendered research, innovation, and development. This action was followed in January 2016 by the publication of a report on the role of gender-based innovations for the UN Sustainable Development Goals towards 2030, Better Science and Technology for All. The report presented gender as a cross-cutting issue for all SDGs, identified 170 examples of gender-based knowledge applicable to SDG targets across all 17 goals, and 200 more examples of research are needed. When applying gender lens to SDGs, the critical issue was discovered that many scientific knowledge and data are gender skewed. Let's take a look at some examples. In 2014, FDA in US released a database of adverse drug reaction report, in which women are far more likely than men to experience an adverse drug reaction, and some drugs simply don't work for women at all. These gender gaps occur by assuming male as a default representation. For example, unidentified cells were primarily male animals or men used in research. Also, women's metabolic rate is lower than men, and there is a sex differences in kidney enzymes are overlooked. In 2017, because of greater health risk to women, large number of medications and medical devices were removed from the markets by the FDA. The existence of gender gaps should be emphasized not only in biomedical health science, but also almost all science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine fields. It is an important agenda that research and innovation should reduce gender gaps by integrating sex and gender analysis in research questions, contents, practices, and agendas. Let's consider one example that gendered innovations on female thermal demand has positive impact on gender equality and sustainable development. The comfortable indoor temperature was set to 20 degrees Celsius by the male default since 1960s, which may overestimate female metabolic rate by up to 35%. By integrating sex-gender analysis and using biophysical computer model, Kingma and his team proved that female thermal demand is different from men by at least 3 Celsius higher. By reducing the bias on thermal comfort of men and women, better predictions of building energy consumption are possible, which lead to energy savings of buildings. This new knowledge on thermal comfort of both men and women can improve not only women's working conditions, SDGs 3, 5, 10, but also contribute to the climate action. Unfortunately, there is no related action yet, as far as I know. Another example is that gender data in mobility may have positive impact on gender equality. Several researches have shown that mobility patterns differ between men and women. For instance, women use public transport and taxi more often than men. Besides, women move around more for care-related trips, as you can see in the figure, public transportation trips by purpose in Spain. Mobility pattern is closely related to the gender roles, so gender data in mobility should be different by the region. Quality gender data in mobility are necessary in planning not only public transportation but also future smart cities. Even though understanding mobility gender data may have positive impact on SDGs 11, 3, 10, the data are seldom available and not used in transport planning. However, having data are not enough. Women's participation at all levels of transport decision-making, planning, management, and operation should be increased to make livable cities for both women and men. The role of big data and artificial intelligence in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals are being actively discussed. A big question is how to guarantee the data accountability. We face gender-skewed data always, which can be seen in Google image search, for example. Leaders and computer programmers are mostly men versus secretaries and helpers are mostly women. It is a great concern that gender-skewed data in social media, TV, radio may lead to bigger gender gaps. Let's consider a couple of gender-biased algorithms. Facial algorithm and recruiter algorithm. Last year, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States tested 189 facial recognition algorithms from 99 developers, including Microsoft, biometric technology companies, and an artificial intelligence company in China. The NIST found out that facial recognition algorithms falsely identify dark women 10 to 100 times more than white men. They falsely identify older adults up to 10 times more than middle-aged adults. The agency could not test systems from Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google because they did not submit their algorithms. Some recruiter algorithms are gender biased, but not known to public until the much harm progressed. Data initiatives and artificial intelligence can contribute to the accomplishment of targets across 17 goals, but it may also inhibit some targets unless reducing gender gaps in transparency, safety, and ethical standards. Now, what could be the available policy-oriented interventions, regulatory insights, and oversights for technologies to enable sustainable development? Over the last 5 years, there has been some accomplishment of gender equality. Namely, 80 gender-related indicators have developed as cross-cutting issue among 230 indicators for SDGs. As you can see in the table, most gender indicators pertain to people-related goals, SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including health, education, and gender equality. There is only one gender indicator in each goal, 6, 7, 9, and no gender indicator for goals 12, 14, and 15 relating to sustainable production, oceans, and biodiversity. However, there is a scientific evidence that related to these goals as well. Remaining hurdles are gender-relevant indicators focus on mainly quantitative aspect and miss the gender dimension in contents, practice, and agendas to reduce gender bias in knowledge, in data creation, and utilization. These are the main concerns of Gender Summit community. Do gender-specific SDG indicators have enough data available to monitor progress? Answer is no. According to OECD report applying a gender lens on SDGs, how are women and girls doing? Gender data are available for only 35 indicators in OECD countries. The report pointed out that no gender data are available for all goals related to planet as well as energy inequality and cities. More importantly, we have to ask the accountability of available gender-specific data. Furthermore, we are interested, do countries support gender-based research and innovation to reduce gender bias in scientific data and knowledge? Do countries have gender statistics budget, invest to collect gender desegregated data, and to secure the accountability of data? The UN expects to play an important role in ensuring that data revolution for sustainable development is inclusive. Recognize the potential of integrating big data and analytics into programs and policies. UN Women aims to identify applications of big data for the impactful solutions for gender equality. Among them, big data can fill many existing gender data gaps in all gender-relevant SDG indicators. Big data sources for gender-related SDG indicators without SDGs 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, and 15 identified. The table in this slide shows only a small part of these types of data suitable for gender-related SDG indicators. Presented in the report, Gender Equality and Big Data, Making Gender Data Visible, published by UN Women in 2018. Certainly, big data sources may fill the data gaps and have positive impact for the gender equality. However, challenges remain. Both big data and their analysis are seldom gender inclusive. We have seen that many data sources in the table are not gender neutral, especially data such as web search data, job application data, TV and radio data, social media data are not gender neutral. Gendered innovations in STEM can play an important role for the achievement of SDGs by reducing gender gaps in scientific knowledge and data. For the better progress towards the gender equality, the science domain, the knowledge domain for sustainable development, and the SDG interventions domain should connect closely. For three domains to learn and influence each other to play the better role for the achievement of SDGs. Science domain for gendered innovations can improve science knowledge more gender neutral by integrating gender dimensions into research and develop new research agenda. Knowledge domain for sustainable development can identify gender gaps in current method tools surveys used for the implementation of SDGs, and develop gender-relevant indicators framework and monitoring tools based on the gender-neutral scientific knowledge. SDG intervention domain can develop policies, programs, projects to reduce gender gaps based on the scientific evidences and implementing actions for better gender equality outcome. Finally, calls to action to promote gendered innovation for SDGs during the decade has to be developed. We may list just a few in the following, expecting this summit to adopt the one. Make integrating gender dimension in public-funded research and development mandatory whenever necessary. Next. Invest to connect to regional groups of experts in the domains of gendered innovations research, knowledge of sustainable development, and SDG interventions to develop the gender indicators and action plans. Recommend the research agenda or data collection to promote gender-sensitive interventions during the decades of actions. And monitor the development of indicators and progress of SDG regularly from gender perspectives. This is the end of the talk. Thank you for your attention.